This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're very fortunate to have as our guest one of my favorite people in Alabama politics, one of my good buddies, Secretary of State John Merrill. John, good to have you on the show.
Steve, always good to be with you, brother.
Folks, this guy is one of my favorites. He's also one of the best retail politicians I've ever seen in my lifetime. And that's going back a while, y'all. I hate to tell you how far back. I've been watching him for a while, but he's got a grassroots organization and just is so friendly and personable, and everybody loves him around the state. And we're sad to see him not run for real. No, he can't run for re-election for another office. He has served his 2 4-year terms as Secretary of State and is finishing up his 8-year tenure as our Secretary of State, and he's done a slam-bang job.
Thank you so much.
Well, we appreciate it. John, let me go back. We've done this over the years. You and I have talked about old-timey politics and everything. But take us back to your roots in Cleveland County, if you will, and at what age you sort of got interested in politics. Of course, your daddy was probate judge, a long-time probate judge of Cleveland County, so you grew up in the courthouse and in politics. But take us back in your lifetime. Was there a hospital in Cleveland County? Were you born in Cleveland County?
I was born in Randolph County. I was born at the Wedowee Hospital that was just demolished in 2019. And the reason was because my mother went into labor when they were down at my papa and mama's house down in Macaville, which is right on the Randolph and Cleveland County line. And so I was born in that hospital, spent 3 days there, and then we went back to Heflin where my folks lived, and of course that's where I grew up. And my dad was the circuit clerk and probate judge of Cleveland County.
So you're circuit clerk before you was probate judge?
That's right. And so I did grow up in the courthouse, and I never thought about doing anything else except being in elective office, because that's where I knew I was supposed to be and where I was supposed to serve. And my mom was a teacher, of course, and we just have deep roots there. And my dad passed away February 17th of 17. My mom still living there in the same house where I grew up.
She's doing well now.
Yes, sir. 80 years old. Still lives in the same house? Yes, sir.
Now, did they have that house what's your first memories? Was your daddy, was he circuit clerk? Do you remember that?
No, because he was elected right after I was born.
To probate judge?
Yeah, well, to circuit clerk.
Okay.
That's right. And then after term, of course, ran for him.
What year would that have been when he was probate?
64. 64. To 76 as the circuit clerk, and then 76 to 82 as the probate judge.
So they were living in that same house where you came home from Wedowee?
Well, they lived in a little apartment house when I first came home from the hospital, and then they moved into this house, and they lived in that house, Lord, their entire married life till my dad passed away. And that's the only house I really remember, because I didn't remember the little apartment.
Is it downtown Heflin?
No, it's just off of number 9 right there, just about a mile from I-20.
Outside the city limits?
No, it's still in the city limits, but just out of town a little piece.
I bet you were good friends with John Stevenson and his family, who had the Wedowee paper.
Actually, John and I were a little bit related, because he married my first cousin, Jennifer Chandler.
Okay. And Jennifer's your first cousin?
Yes, who, as you know, won the gold medal for the U.S. in 1976 in Montreal.
That Jennifer was your first cousin. And but let me ask you this. So back to, who was running the Cleveland News? They merged.
Jack Wood was the first person that I remembered that ran that. Now, Jack Wood was Stedman Shealy's daddy-in-law.
Is that right?
And he just passed away just about 3 months ago.
He owned that paper up, they merged with the other ones?
He owned the paper for a long time, but he sold it to a couple of other people before they merged with the paper in Jacksonville and then Piedmont, and put all those together to make the Northeast Alabama News or Journal or whatever they're calling it now.
Stedman Shealy is a good friend of mine. He's down there in Dothan practicing law.
Yes, sir.
In his hometown. I remember that drive in that Alabama-Auburn game. Don't you remember?
I was there. Yes,
were
sir.
you there?
1979. Yes, sir.
He took that ball about the 5-yard line, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
And we had to drove it 95 yards.
That's exactly right. Had to win that to remain undefeated and become national champions for the second year in a row.
Do you know when he went in that huddle, John, he looked confident. And I was sitting in the stands too, and I thought, you know, there's a lot of pressure. If they don't drive this down the field, they're gonna lose this ball game. And they went in and just methodically went down that field.
Absolutely.
They were still running the wishbone, wasn't
Absolutely, yes, sir.
they? Were they running the wishbone?
And we had a great team that year and some great athletes on that team. And one of the kids that was one of the star receivers is a real close friend of mine today, Keith Pugh, who is from down around Connecticut County.
Yeah,
that's right, from Evergreen. And now he's on the staff at First Baptist Church in Tuscaloosa. And he was Stedman's favorite target as a wideout, just like he had been Jeff Rutledge's favorite target the year before.
Did he stay in Tuscaloosa after that?
You know, he did not. He actually moved around, worked for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, pastored churches in Jackson and Sylacauga, then came to Tuscaloosa back about 2004 and has been there ever since.
John, that's kind of what when you went off to, now you went to the University of Alabama. What year did you enter the University of Alabama?
I was there from 82 to 87 and President Student Body 86, 87.
I knew you were President Student Body at Alabama, but did you stayed, you just liked Tuscaloosa and stayed there?
Yes, sir. That's where Cindy and I met. And of course, she was from Phil Campbell. And
Franklin
enabled
County.
us to, that's right. That enabled us to have a place that we could call our own.
Were y'all the same age?
Same age, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And y'all met there. Y'all got 2 wonderful children.
Yes, sir. You're kind to say that. Our boy is working for Chick-fil-A Corporation. Our daughter is an international flight attendant and charter specialist for
Where do they
major
live?
airline. The boy lives in Orlando, Florida, and our daughter, she lives in Nashville. She lived in Queens for 4 years, but right during the COVID, she moved home to Nashville, and that's where she is now. She still uses New York as her base.
John, does your son with Chick-fil-A, he worked for the corporation?
Yes, sir.
For the corporation, they got him in Orlando?
Yes, sir. And he's moved all over the country, Steve. He's been from Boston, Massachusetts to Portland, Oregon, and all parts in between. And everywhere he went, they provided him with a place to live and a vehicle. So that makes it really nice.
Now, is he named after you?
No, he's named Pelham Brooks Merrill.
After your uncle had an
That's
uncle
right.
who
It
was
was
Pelham Merrill.
on the Supreme Court for 24 years and in the
He's
legislature.
named for him?
Yes, sir. Legislature 12 before that. And then he's named Brooks for Brooks Robinson.
Okay, the baseball player.
That's right, from
Were
Baltimore.
you a big Baltimore Oriole fan?
Well, I love Brooks.
He
Yes, sir.
was a legend, wasn't he?
He was. He was the human vacuum cleaner.
I knew you liked Alabama football and every sport, but I know you're a big baseball fan too.
Yes, sir.
I like Brooks Robinson. I'm so much older than you, though. My favorite players were my era with Mickey Mantle and Hank Aaron and Willie Mays and Roberto Clemente.
That's some outstanding ones right there, my friend.
You know, I had baseball cards of every one of them. I collected baseball cards when I was little. Did you do that?
Yes, sir. Still have mine.
Do you still
Yes,
have
sir.
yours?
Yes, sir.
I lost mine along the way, but I had everybody. You know, I loved it so much. I loved the Yankees, and in that era, Bobby Richardson played, Tony Kubek, Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle, and I grew up in Troy, and everybody in Troy read the Montgomery Advertiser, and so I'd get my Montgomery Advertiser out in the morning. I'd beat my daddy out there to it, and I'd get they had the box scores,
Right.
and I kept their batting averages. Like I'd say, well, Mantle went 1 for 4, and I said, well, it makes his average.
Right.
Did you love it that much?
Oh, yes, sir. We loved it just like that. And, of course, then we didn't have all the social media and all the internet, those networking opportunities and understanding all those changes. You had to do it like you're talking about.
I know
Made it extra special, though.
I'd tell my daddy, I said, boy, Mickey Mantle dropped his average by 1 point yesterday by going 1 for 3. But he had a home run, though. He's on course. He hit 60 home runs. I never forget, that was a heck of a year when Maris and Mantle both heading towards 60.
That's right, 1961. That was well before I was born, but I've read a lot about it. And the chase, it was really something else.
It was a great thing to follow. John, back to now. As soon as you and Cindy, y'all got married when y'all were in college, and she was from Franklin County, you were from Cleveland.
Yes, sir.
And you were president of SGA. Now, y'all immediately got active. That Calvary Baptist Church wanted all the students to go there anyway, but you stayed in that church.
Well, that's exactly right. Yes, sir. We had the privilege to be worshiping there for 40 years this year, actually.
Well, now, is y'all's house in Tuscaloosa close to that?
Yeah, well, our home is actually outside of town. We're about 6 miles from downtown Tuscaloosa. We live in the Taylorville community, which is down where Hillcrest High School and Shelton State are located.
John, when I first met you, you were working with Tuscaloosa Board of Education.
That's right.
You'd come down to the legislature. I was in the legislature. And what was your purpose to come to the legislature? You could come in and visit with us and everything?
We're trying to keep y'all straight. And I realized it was too big a job for me.
I remember us meeting the first time.
Yes, sir.
When you were working with Tuscaloosa Board of Education.
Yes, sir.
And I always figured you'd be in it. It wasn't long after that you went to the House of
Yes,
Representatives.
sir. And I thoroughly enjoyed my service there.
What year did you come to the House?
I was elected in 2010, and I served from 10 until 14. I was in that class when we became the majority for the Republicans to serve in the legislature for the state.
I remember that.
Yes, sir.
Now, you only served one term?
Yes, sir, just one term, and then ran for secretary and was elected in 2014.
Yes, so you ran one term in the House. Is that the same seat Bentley followed you in?
No, actually, Bill Poole was elected the same time I was, and Bill followed Governor Bentley. I followed Gerald Allen, who moved to the Senate.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you still live in the district you were serving the House
Well,
in?
actually, that district, I just told Cindy this the other day, the district where I was elected, Steve, has changed 4 times since I was elected. And now we don't even live in 62 anymore. We live in 72. And so I've had 3 different people represent me in Montgomery since I left the legislature. It's just odd. And we've never moved homes. It's just the lines have changed, and so that's why my representation has changed.
John, you have done an excellent job as secretary. You served from 2010 to 14 in the House from Tuscaloosa County, and then you went on to. Now, did you go over and get another part of another county too? Didn't you have a little bit?
No,
of
sir.
just
Fortunately
Tuscaloosa?
for me, it was all contained in Tuscaloosa County, the southern and eastern part of the county.
Was that district that Kyle South is in now? Was that always boogered up like that, where it comes in and gets part of Tuscaloosa?
No, that district was created the way that it was because of some irritation with a member who previously served in that position.
In the House?
That's correct.
From
That-
Fayette or from
well, actually, he was from Lamar County.
Okay.
But he represented part of Fayette, part of Tuscaloosa County. And now, as you know, that district goes all the way over to Jefferson.
Yeah.
And it gets still part of eastern Tuscaloosa County, Fayette County. No more Pickens, but it is still a large district geographically.
You know, that sort of, I bet y'all didn't really like that being in the Tuscaloosa delegation because, as you know, serving the legislature, local bills are vital. So it might have messed up the cartwheel a little bit in the Tuscaloosa delegation to have somebody just come in there a little bit like that.
Well, we were fortunate. When we were there, we had a great team of people working together with A.J. McCampbell, Chris England, Alan Harper. We had Bill Poole. I was there. And then we had Daniel Bowman, who was from Sulligent. So we had a pretty good team of people that were representing our area, and we usually agreed on most things that were presented to us.
How many members were in y'all when y'all
At
was
that time, there were about 8 of us.
in the House or just House
7
and
or
Senate?
8 that were in our delegation. Yes, sir. Representing all or a portion of Tuscaloosa County.
Now, does Singleton come in Tuscaloosa? He don't come in Tuscaloosa, does he? Bobby Singleton.
Bobby Singleton does come in Tuscaloosa County. He actually represents me in the state Senate.
Okay.
And of course, that district is the largest Senate district in the state. But Bobby comes up from Greensboro, where his home is.
Well, Tuscaloosa is a heck of a good place, and you know, but the state's going to miss you as Secretary of State. You've done an excellent job, kept everything perfect. It had no problems, run the elections perfectly, and got us in step with everything. Boy, things have changed a lot technologically.
Yes, sir.
Since you went in there in January 2015.
Yes, sir.
To right now, the last part of 2022.
Yes, sir.
In your 8 years, tell us the technological changes in that office.
Well, Steve, we modernized the office in dramatic ways. In the elections process, one of the things we've done is We've had electronic poll books that are now in use in all 1,980 polling sites in the 67 counties. The reason that's important, reduces the wait time 60 to 75% for the people that go to vote. Also, we update our voter rolls every day, not just in a seasonal perspective. And I think it's a good time for me to introduce the fact that with our campaign that we've had each and every year from 15 until this year to promote voter registration and photo ID, since January the 19th, 2015, as of today, we've registered 2,132,525 new voters.
New voters?
Yes, sir.
Give me that number again,
2,132,525. And we now have a state record 3,673,969 registered voters in the state. Per capita, no state in the union's done what we've done in that same period of time. 96% of all eligible African Americans are registered to vote.
How many?
96%.
Are you serious?
Yes, sir. 91% of all whites are registered, and 94% of all eligible Alabamians are registered.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
Yes, sir.
You mean 94% of all eligible Alabamians are registered to vote?
Yes, sir. And we're very excited about that. And one of the reasons that we've had so much success, Steve, we've been able to allow people to register to vote electronically if they have a valid Alabama driver's license, because then we know if they are U.S. citizens or not, and that they're living in the appropriate jurisdiction. Otherwise, you have to use the old paper application to do it.
Well, how do other states compare with that, for example? How do our neighboring
Steve,
states?
no state can equal us in what we've done in that same period of time.
So we're number one, 94% in the country. That would sound like it might be. That's amazing.
Yes, sir.
And 96% of African Americans and 91% of whites.
And I also want to remind you, because you touched on this just a minute ago, but after the 2020 general election, we were recognized by Conservative Women for Good Government in Washington, D.C., the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C., University of Southern California in Los Angeles as being the #1 state in the union for election integrity, transparency, and accountability.
Now, John, you've got, by serving 8 years in the Secretary of State, you've got to know a lot of the other Secretary of States, haven't you?
Yes, sir, very well.
You go to all the conferences.
Yes, sir.
And y'all have got to be big friends.
Yes, sir.
Only 50 of y'all.
That's right. And I have actually served 2 terms as the national chair for the Republican Secretaries of State.
I didn't know that.
Yes, sir.
Do you know the numbers of Republican and Democratic?
Yes, sir. There's actually 28 Republicans and 22 Democrats.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh. And from logical states that would
Yes, sir.
probably vote that way presidentially too.
That's right.
Now you developed somewhat of a friendship, and you've taken up for him with the guy in Georgia who got
Yes,
all
sir.
the heat from Trump. You've walked a good line there because Trump likes you a lot, as well as the people in Georgia respect you.
Yes, sir.
Because they think you're doing a good job.
Well, you're very
fair.
kind to say that on both accounts, and I appreciate that. Of course, you know personally of my relationship with President Trump.
I do.
You were actually at the office.
I know it. I can't believe it. Trump don't call everybody, y'all. I was having lunch with John in his office, and the president just calls him up, and John talks to him like he's his old buddy. You know, I never, people think that people give Trump deference, and you gave him deference, but you also are very assertive with him.
Yes, sir.
You were like, I think that's why he may like you. I bet you anything, you're probably Trump's best confidant in Alabama.
Well, you're kind to say
People
that.
don't realize that either. I don't think the average person realizes that.
Well, I don't think it's important for me to advertise that fact, but for me to be in a position to help President Trump and to answer questions that he's got about what's going on in Alabama as well as the other southeastern states, I think gives him somebody he can rely on and depend on to be accurate, truthful, and accountable to what's going on, so he's more well informed.
Mm-hmm. I could tell from that conversation he thought a lot of you. He was seeking your advice, and he wasn't as how would I say bombastic as he usually is, like bombing somebody, or he seemed to be real calm and real, almost like he was talking to a good friend and confidant. And you told him right. You said, Mr. President, I think the guy in Georgia did the right thing. I mean, he was trying to do the right thing. And you may, think he wasn't, but he was. And but he liked the frankness, I think.
Right. And as you recall too, we had a conversation, an in-depth conversation about Governor Kemp over there as well, who's a special friend to me, and we really talked more about that than we did Secretary Raffensperger. But Brad had some issues, but he was able to get renominated, and he's going to be on the ballot as the Republican candidate in November, and of course, Governor Kemp is up for another run against Stacey Abrams over there.
Well, that state's turned purple.
Yes, sir.
It's a total. We're surrounded by 2 swing states now.
Yes, sir.
I don't think in mine and probably your lifetime, though, Alabama's going to be any more than a red state.
I agree with that 100%.
I think we're not headed that way. Us and Tennessee and Mississippi, and probably Arkansas and some others, and then all those Midwestern states will be red Republican. I think we have 21 statewide elected officials, and all 21 are Republican.
Yes, sir.
6 out of 7,
Members of Congress.
members of Congress,
Yes,
and
sir.
both senators. John, I'm not asking you to predict this, but the thing about the House of Representatives in Washington, I'm of the opinion that even though some of the Democrats have clawed back a little bit, I think the Republicans take the House.
Steve, look, you have to be objective when you say this, but it needs to be understood that in a typical year with a typical president serving in that typical president's first term, historically, in the history of the Republic, you have had 28 seats that have changed hands from the party in control to the party that was not in control every election cycle. So with that being said, you would think that when this election is over, the Republicans will be up 23 seats.
I think you're right. I think that's about the number. I think it could be higher because the inflation is hurting Biden and the Democrats a good bit. So I think that'll be interesting. Of course, we're so red, it doesn't matter.
Yes, sir.
We're going to be 6-1 either way.
Yes, sir.
The inflation rate could be 40%.
That's right.
And we're still going to be 6-1.
That's right.
I got a column coming to that effect.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't affect our politics. Pocketbook issues may affect Pennsylvania, Ohio, but we're still going to be 6-1.
Yes, sir.
Regardless. Well, John, a lot of folks are disappointed you didn't run for anything else, but there really were a lot of those jobs were not wide open anyway that would be parallel to yours. Although I've said this on this show in my column too, the job you're in is the toughest of those secondary jobs to perform. I mean, when people come to me and say, I want to run for Secretary of State or State Treasurer or Public Service Commission, I say, well, if you want to work, I mean, you got a real job as Secretary of State. I mean, if you don't want to work, go to the Public Service Commission. They don't do anything. I mean, they don't even show up by once a month. I mean, maybe then, and they even make more money. I mean,
No
it's
doubt.
like, but the Secretary of State's job that's a full-time job. Shoot, you got 50 or 60 employees.
Well, actually, Steve, when we started, we had 49 employees. Today, we have 34 employees.
Doing the same
so
job.
we've reduced the total number of people and increased the efficiencies in the office dramatically. But I appreciate you saying that.
Well, it's a full-time job. I mean,
Yes, sir.
The treasurer's job is not as demanding, but young Boozer's perfect for cut out of that job.
I think young Boozer's the best treasurer in the history of the state of Alabama.
Well, if you had to draw up somebody who would be a good secretary, a good treasurer, look at his background.
That's right.
I mean, Stanford undergraduate in finance, Wharton School of Business, banking career, great political name, young
Yes,
Boozer.
sir. Yes, sir.
You know that family history, his daddy and everything.
Yes, sir.
His daddy, I met Young when his daddy, when they sold his company on Cotton States Life Insurance, and he sold it to Alpha, he became a lobbyist for Alpha because he had all of his interest, and he had a lot of money, but he would come down with the Alpha lobbyist and buddy around with us when I was in the legislature, and he brought Young by one day. But that's a heck of a name, isn't it?
No question about that.
Political.
One of a kind.
You remember that one. But you were, and we talked about this, you were born and raised to be in politics. All your life, born in that Cleveland County Courthouse, and you grew up with Daddy being circuit clerk and probate judge. John, I never forget this as long as I live. Your dad, when you ran for the second term as Secretary of State or first term?
First term.
First term.
Yes, sir.
What's that box up there where your daddy's roots are in?
It was up in Edwardsville.
Uh-huh.
Yes, sir. And I got.
What part of Cleveland County is that
That's in the eastern part of the county. It's in the northeastern part of the county. But they voted 99 people, and I got 99 votes.
I ain't never heard of that before. There's usually somebody y'all's family's made mad, or just you don't. I mean,
My daddy was so proud.
I bet he was. But I had boxes kind of like that when I first ran for legislature, where my great granddaddy had been from in the northern part of Pike County. But it was like 90-7.
Yes, sir.
I remember one in Needmore. It was really the two people. We lost 2 votes, but we knew who they were. They had told us, Steve, we'd like to vote for you, but we're married to your opponent's. Our daughter's
Yes,
married
sir.
to your opponent, so we're going to have to vote for her.
But you know, it's funny that you say that, Steve, because I'll tell you a story I've never shared with you before. In Coleman County, there's a box there that's in the heart of the county called Beat 8. It's near Cold Springs. And there's one person that she's the inspector there. She runs that box. And I met her when I was campaigning back in 12 and 13 and then 14. And I got the votes out of that box. And don't hold me to the numbers, but I'll just explain it to you this way. If there were 250 people that voted, I got 212 of the votes. And she told me the next time I saw her, we're going to be dealing with those 38 other people.
That's what we knew our 2 were in that box. But she probably going to find out who those 38 were.
No question.
Johnny, we all going to miss you being in it, but we're hoping you're going to come back and run for something again because you're still young. But you've done a heck of a job as Secretary of State, and the state owes you a lot of accolades and thanks for what you've done. I hate to tell you, our time's up. It goes by in a hurry, doesn't it?
Yes, sir. I always enjoy visiting with you.
I do, you too. Folks, our guest tonight has been what I would consider a legendary political figure in the state now, John Merrill, who was born and raised in Cleveland County and went on to the University of Alabama, became SGA president, stayed there, served a term in the legislature, and now he's finishing up his second 4-year term as Secretary of State. He's done an outstanding job. And I don't think we've heard less of John Merrill, but we want to thank him for being on our show and thank him for serving 8 years as Secretary of State and doing us a good job. And we hope your viewers will tune in next week for Alabama Politics. Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you, Steve.
Appreciate it.